What happens when one of Hollywood's most legendary icons walks onto a morning talk show and refuses to play by the rules? In just 38 seconds, a single comment would turn a routine interview into the most explosive moment in Good Morning America history, leaving Lara Spencer scrambling to save face as Clint Eastwood walked off the set in front of millions of viewers. The studio lights were bright that morning. Clint Eastwood sat across from Lara Spencer at the Good Morning America desk, his weathered face calm and collected. George Stephanopoulos sat to Spencer's left, and Robin Roberts was positioned on the far end of the curved desk. The audience had tuned in expecting a typical promotional interview. What they got instead would become the talk of television for weeks to come. Spencer started off friendly enough. "Clint, it's wonderful to have you here. You've had such an incredible career spanning decades. But I have to ask, don't you think it's time to let the younger generation take over? I mean, you're what, 80-something now?" The studio went quiet. Eastwood's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I'm still working because I love what I do. Age doesn't define capability." Spencer laughed, a sharp sound that echoed through the studio. "Well, sure, but come on. There are so many young directors out there who could use the opportunities. Don't you feel like you're taking up space at this point?" Robin Roberts shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Lara, I think what Clint brings to cinema is—" Spencer cut her off with a wave of her hand. "Robin, please. I'm asking the questions here." She turned back to Eastwood. "I'm just being honest. The industry needs fresh blood, not the same old faces doing the same old things." Eastwood leaned forward slightly. "The same old things? I've directed over 30 films, each one different from the last. I've told stories about war, redemption, justice, and humanity. What exactly is old about that?" Spencer rolled her eyes in a way that the cameras caught perfectly. "Oh, here we go. The defensive Hollywood legend routine. Look, I've seen your recent movies. They're fine, I guess, but they're not exactly groundbreaking. Maybe you had your time, and now it's over." George Stephanopoulos cleared his throat. "Lara, I think we should—" "George, I've got this," Spencer interrupted, not even looking at him. She kept her focus on Eastwood. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You're clinging to relevance in an industry that's moved past you." The legendary actor sat back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "Is that what you think?" Spencer shrugged. "It's not just what I think. It's reality. You had an amazing run, don't get me wrong. But every athlete knows when to retire. Every performer knows when to exit the stage. Why can't you see that your time has passed?" Robin Roberts tried again. "Clint has won multiple Academy Awards, and his films continue to resonate with audiences worldwide. I think that speaks for itself." Spencer turned to Roberts with visible irritation. "Robin, seriously, can you let me conduct this interview? You're not helping." She looked back at Eastwood. "Your last few films barely made a splash. The box office numbers don't lie. Maybe it's time to accept that you're not the draw you used to be." Eastwood's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "Box office isn't the only measure of a film's worth. Some of the greatest movies ever made didn't set records when they were released." Sure, Spencer said dismissively. "But we live in the real world, not some artistic fantasy land. If people aren't watching your movies, what's the point? You're basically making vanity projects at this stage." The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut. The crew members behind the cameras exchanged worried glances. This was not going according to plan. Eastwood spoke slowly, deliberately. "Vanity projects? I've dedicated my life to storytelling. Every film I make, I pour everything into it. To reduce that to vanity is insulting, not just to me, but to everyone who works on those films." Spencer waved her hand again. "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just asking the tough questions that other interviewers are too scared to ask. Isn't that what journalism is about? George Stephanopoulos jumped in. Lara, maybe we should move to a different topic. Clint, tell us about your upcoming... No, George, Spencer said firmly. I want to finish this point. Clint, you've been in this business forever. You've seen people overstay their welcome. John Wayne kept making movies when he was way too old. Same with so many others. Do you really want to be that person? The one people remember as the guy who didn't know when to quit? Robin Roberts looked directly at the camera, her expression pained. She knew this was going off the rails, but Spencer seemed determined to push forward. Eastwood's voice was quiet, but powerful. John Wayne was a friend of mine. He worked until the end because he loved acting. There's honor in that, not shame. Spencer laughed again, that same sharp cutting sound. Honor, please. It's called desperation. Holding on to glory days that are long gone. And honestly, your recent work shows it. The scripts are mediocre, the performances are stiff, and the whole thing feels like someone trying to relive their past instead of accepting their present. The studio was deathly silent. Even the camera operators seemed frozen. Eastwood stood up slowly, removing his microphone. I've been disrespected before, but never quite like this. I came here to talk about my work, not to be insulted on national television. Spencer's eyes widened slightly, but she tried to maintain control. Oh, sit down. Don't be so dramatic. This is a conversation. If you can't handle a little criticism, maybe that proves my point. A conversation requires mutual respect, Eastwood said, his voice carrying across the studio. You've shown none. You've dismissed my career, insulted my integrity, and belittled everything I've worked for. That's not journalism. That's cruelty disguised as honesty. Robin Roberts stood up as well. Clint, please, I apologize for... You have nothing to apologize for, Robin, Eastwood said, nodding at her. You've been nothing but professional. He looked at Stephanopoulos. You too, George. Spencer's face flushed red. Are you seriously walking out? Do you know how many people would love to be sitting in that chair right now? How many actors would kill for this exposure? Eastwood paused, turning back to face her. Then invite one of them. Someone you'll actually respect enough to have a real conversation with. He looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching who enjoys my work, thank you. Your support means everything. To those who don't, that's fine too. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I won't sit here and be torn down for the entertainment of morning television. Spencer shot up from her chair. You don't get to lecture me about entertainment. I've been doing this job for years. I know what audiences want. They want honesty, not some protective bubble where we pretend everyone's work is brilliant. There's a difference between honesty and hostility, Eastwood replied. You've chosen the latter. George Stephanopoulos tried one more time to salvage the situation. Clint, if you just give us a few more minutes, we can reset this conversation, and... There's nothing to reset, George, Eastwood said. This interview is over. Spencer's voice rose. Fine. Walk out. Show everyone that you can't handle tough questions. Show everyone that the tough guy image is just an act. Eastwood stopped at the edge of the set. I've answered tough questions my entire career. From journalists, from critics, from audiences, but there's a way to ask them that doesn't involve tearing someone down as a person. You never learned that lesson. Oh, please, Spencer shot back. You're just mad because someone finally called you out. Someone finally said what needed to be said. You're past your prime, Clint. Deal with it. Robin Roberts stepped between them. Lara, that's enough. This has gone too far. Spencer turned on her. Stay out of this, Robin. You've been interrupting me this entire time. This is my interview. It's not an interview anymore, Roberts said firmly. It's an attack, and it's unprofessional. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of the unraveling situation. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial but the drama was too compelling. Millions of viewers sat glued to their screens. Spencer's voice took on a mocking tone. Look at this. The whole panel turning against me because I dared to be honest. Because I dared to say what everyone's thinking. Clint Eastwood is a has-been who should retire and make room for new talent. Eastwood's expression remained composed, but his words carried weight. You know what's sad? You had a chance to have a meaningful conversation about filmmaking, about storytelling, about what it means to dedicate your life to art. Instead, you chose to be mean. And for what? Ratings? Attention? Whatever it is, it's not worth it. Spencer's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare judge me. You don't know anything about what it takes to do this job. To sit here every morning and make television interesting. To keep audiences engaged. If this is your idea of engagement, Eastwood said, then you've lost sight of what matters. Good television doesn't require cruelty. It doesn't require tearing people down. It requires curiosity, intelligence, and respect. I don't need a lecture from you, Spencer snapped. You're from a different era, an era that's over. You don't understand modern media. Stephanopoulos finally stood up, his voice firm. Lara, I think we need to go to commercial. Now. Spencer ignored him. No, we're finishing this. Clint wants to walk out? Fine. Let him walk. Let everyone see that he can't handle the heat. Eastwood shook his head slowly. The only heat here is your anger, and I'm not going to stand in the blast radius anymore. He turned and walked toward the exit. Spencer called after him. Run away then, just like you run away from reality. You're a relic, Clint, a fossil that belongs in a museum, not on a movie set. Robin Roberts' voice was sharp. Lara, stop it. Right now. Spencer whirled on her. You stop it. I'm tired of you playing the nice one while I have to be the bad guy. Someone has to ask the hard questions. Hard questions and personal attacks are not the same thing, Roberts said, and you know it. The tension between the hosts was now as dramatic as the confrontation with Eastwood had been. The audience at home was witnessing something unprecedented, a complete breakdown of a major morning show, live on air. Spencer's voice cracked slightly. I was doing my job. I was being a journalist. No, George Stephanopoulos said quietly. You were being cruel. There's a difference. Eastwood had reached the edge of the studio floor. He paused one last time, looking back at the chaos he was leaving behind. I hope you figure out what kind of person you want to be, he said to Spencer. Because right now, you're not someone I recognize as a professional. Spencer's face contorted with rage. Get out. Just get out. We don't need you. We don't need your lectures or your outdated ideas about respect and professionalism. This is modern television. This is what people want. If that's what people want, Eastwood said, then I feel sorry for them. He walked off the set. The studio erupted into chaos. Producers rushed onto the floor. Makeup artists and assistants scattered. Robin Roberts sat back down, her head in her hands. George Stephanopoulos stood frozen, unsure what to do next. Spencer remained standing, her chest heaving, her face flushed. What are you all looking at? Go to commercial. Go to commercial right now. But the cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, capturing her standing alone at the desk, isolated from her co-hosts, the set in disarray behind her. It was an image that would be replayed over and over in the coming days. Robin Roberts finally looked up. How could you do that? How could you treat a guest that way? Spencer's voice was defensive now. I was asking legitimate questions. If he couldn't handle them, that's his problem. Those weren't questions, Stephanopoulos said. Those were insults. You called his work mediocre. You said he was clinging to relevance. You compared him to someone who doesn't know when to quit. That's not journalism, Lara. Spencer sat down heavily. You're both overreacting. People get asked tough questions all the time. Politicians, celebrities, everyone. Why is he special? Because there's a way to challenge someone without destroying them, Robert said. You know that. You've done it before. But today, you crossed a line. The producers were signaling frantically from off camera. Finally, one of them rushed onto the set and whispered urgently to Stephanopoulos. He nodded and turned to the camera. We're going to take a quick break, he said, his voice strained. We'll be right back. As soon as the cameras cut, the studio exploded into conversation. Spencer sat at the desk, suddenly very alone. Roberts and Stephanopoulos moved away from her, talking in low, urgent tones with producers. An assistant approached Spencer nervously. Are you okay? Spencer waved her away. I'm fine. Everyone's being ridiculous. I did nothing wrong. But even as she said it, she could feel the weight of what had just happened settling over her. The studio, usually buzzing with friendly energy, felt cold and hostile. Her co-hosts wouldn't look at her. The crew members were avoiding eye contact. Somewhere off set, Clint Eastwood was leaving the building. He walked past confused staff members, past security guards who recognized what had happened from the monitors, past fans who had been waiting in the lobby, hoping for a glimpse of the star. He pushed open the doors and stepped out into the morning air, leaving behind the chaos, the cameras, and a morning show that would never be quite the same again. Back in the studio, Spencer sat at the desk, her hands clasped in front of her, her face a mask of forced composure. Around her, people whispered and pointed. The interview that was supposed to be a highlight of the week had turned into something else entirely. Robin Roberts walked back to the desk slowly. You need to think about what just happened, she said quietly to Spencer. I know what happened, Spencer replied, her voice tight. I asked questions. He overreacted. Roberts shook her head. That's not what happened, and you know it. You went after him. You made it personal. And now he's gone. Good, Spencer said, but her voice lacked conviction. If he can't handle real television, then he shouldn't be here. Stephanopoulos returned to his seat. The producers want us to address this when we come back. We need to acknowledge what happened. Spencer's eyes widened. Acknowledge what? That a guest walked out? That's his choice. We need to apologize, Roberts said firmly. To Clint, to the audience, to everyone watching. I'm not apologizing for doing my job, Spencer said, her voice rising again. Then you don't understand what your job is, Stephanopoulos said. Our job is to inform, to entertain, and to respect the people who come on this show. You did none of that today. The floor manager counted them back from commercial. 3, 2, 1. The red lights on the cameras flicked back on. Stephanopoulos spoke first, his voice measured. Welcome back. As you just saw, our interview with Clint Eastwood ended abruptly. We want to address that. Spencer sat silently, her jaw clenched. Roberts continued. What happened there was unfortunate. Clint Eastwood is a Hollywood legend, someone who has contributed immeasurably to American cinema. He deserved better than what just transpired. Spencer finally spoke. I was asking tough questions. That's what journalists do. There's a difference between tough questions and personal attacks, Stephanopoulos said, addressing the camera rather than Spencer. We regret that this morning's interview took the turn that it did. The rest of the show proceeded awkwardly, with Spencer participating less and less, her co-hosts carrying most of the conversation. The energy in the studio remained tense, the usual warmth and camaraderie of the morning show replaced with uncomfortable silences and forced smiles. When the cameras finally turned off at the end of the broadcast, Spencer stood up without a word and walked off the set. No one called after her. No one followed her. The damage had been done, and everyone knew it. In the control room, producers were already reviewing the footage, already calculating the fallout, already wondering how they would address what had become the most dramatic moment in Good Morning America's history. Somewhere outside the building, Clint Eastwood climbed into a waiting car. He didn't look back at the studio. He didn't need to. He had said everything that needed to be said. He had walked away with his dignity intact, something that couldn't be said for everyone involved in that morning's broadcast. The interview that was supposed to promote a film, that was supposed to be a pleasant conversation between a star and a morning show, had instead become something else entirely. A cautionary tale about respect, about professionalism, and about the line between tough questioning and outright hostility. As the car pulled away from the curb, Eastwood sat in the back seat, quiet and contemplative. He had faced down outlaws in movies, had directed films about war and conflict, had spent decades in an industry known for its sharp elbows and fierce competition. But he had never expected to be treated with such open contempt on a morning talk show. Back in the studio, the crew was breaking down the set, talking in hushed tones about what they had witnessed. The makeup artists who had prepared Eastwood for the interview felt terrible. The camera operators who had captured every moment of the confrontation were already being asked for copies of the footage. The assistants who had greeted Eastwood when he arrived were embarrassed that his visit had ended this way. And through it all, the question remained: how had a simple interview gone so catastrophically wrong? How had a respected journalist allowed herself to attack a guest so viciously? What had possessed Spencer to continue pushing, even when everyone around her was signaling that she had gone too far? There were no easy answers. Only the footage, played and replayed, analyzed and dissected, shared and commented on across every social media platform and news outlet. Clint Eastwood had walked onto that set as a guest. He had left as a symbol of dignity in the face of disrespect. And in those 38 seconds when Spencer had first questioned whether he should retire, she had set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. The morning had started like any other. It had ended with one of the most legendary figures in Hollywood walking off a major network television show, leaving behind a host who had forgotten the most basic rule of interviewing. Treat your guests with respect, even when you disagree with them. The lights in the studio dimmed. The crew packed up their equipment. The hosts went their separate ways. And the story of what happened that morning began to spread. A reminder that live television is unpredictable, that respect matters more than ratings, and that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Clint Eastwood's car disappeared into the city traffic. The studio fell silent. And Good Morning America would never quite be the same again.